Hello everyone and welcome to the Juniper Mist Virtual Summit on the AI-driven enterprise. Thank you for your participation. This particular session is so important. Contact tracing, proximity tracing in the AI-driven enterprise is a hot topic right now as enterprises are returning to work. My name is Sudhir Mata. I'm the VP of Products here at Mist Juniper. And what I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes or so is lay out what are the macro strategies that governments and public health institutions are taking for contact tracing. What questions enterprise IT is getting from the business side to have contact tracing and enable contact tracing within the enterprise. And how Mist Juniper uniquely can help in this problem space. So let's get started. At a macro level, what we're seeing is the governments are actually starting to play a huge role in contact tracing. Public health institutions, in partnership with governments, are going to be responsible for the macro contact tracing initiative. And they are supported by Google and Apple in their brand new partnership. This is powerful technology partnership of the two market leaders for handheld technologies in the world. And what they're doing is truly critical for us to deal with the COVID-19 global pandemic. But this is at a macro level. What are enterprises having to deal with? What questions are enterprise IT getting? And what questions are enterprise IT being asked to take responsibility for? And how can Juniper Mist uniquely position enterprise for this challenge? This is what we're going to look at. But let's start with what is the Apple-Google partnership? Apple-Google are doing something very unique that I've never done before in collaborating for a contact tracing application. Let's listen.
In the face of the global pandemic, Apple and Google are doing something they almost never do: work together.
Beginning next month, Apple and Google are releasing software.
The two companies will roll out a contact tracing system.
Will use Bluetooth to help notify someone if they've been in contact with someone who's infected.
On April 10th, the companies announced a new project to halt the spread of the novel coronavirus. It's a system for automatically and autonomously logging all the people you've been in contact with. So if one of those people gets diagnosed with coronavirus, you'll get an alert saying you've been exposed and should quarantine. It's a really ambitious project, and we're only a couple weeks in, but it can make a huge difference in how we recover from the outbreak. The system works by blasting out short codes over Bluetooth, technically the Bluetooth Low Energy Beacon system. Your phone collects a log of all the codes you've received, representing all the people who have been close enough to infect you. Those codes are encrypted and constantly changing, so you can't use them to work back to a person's identity. Even if someone does test positive and decides to share that diagnosis, it's still pretty hard to figure out who the person is, although it's not completely impossible. More importantly, the codes you collect never leave your phone, so there's no master list of who's interacted with who. The details here are a little complex, and we'll link to a more thorough explanation in the description, but the important thing is it's not collecting absolute location data, and there are a lot of measures to keep you anonymous while you're using it. Apple and Google hope to make an API available to public health agencies by mid-May, which means that by the summer you could see an app using this system built and distributed by your state government. In the months after that, they're going to ship it as an update to iOS and Android. So it'll still require explicit permission. They're not trying to sign anyone up for this against their will, but don't be surprised if you start seeing pop-up notifications asking if you want to join the project.
And so this Apple-Google partnership is based on a very groundbreaking foundational innovation at MIT. So let's take a quick look at the MIT PACT technology that is the foundation for the Apple-Google partnership.
When a patient is diagnosed with an infectious disease like COVID-19, an important step in slowing the transmission of the disease is contact tracing. Contact tracing seeks to identify the people who have had close contact with the infected individual and who therefore may be infected themselves. This targeted strategy reduces the need for stay-at-home periods. However, manual contact tracing is subject to a person's ability to recall everyone they have come in contact with over a 2-week period. There is need for an automated, privacy-preserving contact tracing system. MIT is developing one such system. Cell phones are constantly advertising their presence using Bluetooth. These advertisements, which we call chirps, can be anonymous and contain no location data or personally identifiable information. Every phone stores a list of all the chirps that it has sent and all the chirps it has overheard from nearby phones within arm's reach. The MIT system utilizes these lists to enable contact tracing for people diagnosed with COVID-19. This system not only identifies contacts, it also estimates the distance between individuals, as well as the amount of time they spent in close proximity to each other. When a person is diagnosed with COVID-19, public health professionals would coordinate with the patient to upload the list of chirps sent out by their phone to a public database. Meanwhile, people who have not been diagnosed can have their phones do a daily scan of the public database to see if their phones have overheard any of the chirps used by people later diagnosed with COVID-19. This indicates that they were in close, prolonged contact with that anonymous individual. Depending on the circumstances of contact, they may be referred to the public health authorities, who may recommend varying courses of action, including symptom watch, testing, and self-quarantine.
So the Apple-Google partnership is awesome. It is something that is absolutely necessary at a macro level to deal with the global pandemic of COVID-19. However, it does not address the needs that enterprise security, HR, and facilities teams are being challenged by the business side too, right? It does not address some foundational requirements. So that being what it is, what are governments doing with the Apple-Google technology? So a lot of governments have already launched mobile apps. Australia launched COVID Safe, UK has launched an app of its own, Germany has launched a mobile app, but is now pulling it back in lieu of the Apple-Google partnership. India has actually launched Arogya Setu, a mobile app across the country. The key piece why India is highlighted here is India has made it mandatory for employees to return to work. They need to have the government-issued app. This could become the norm world over. All of us may be carrying a CDC-issued app here in the US or anywhere in the world, a government-issued app for contact tracing for COVID-19. But now let's zoom into what are the enterprise use cases. So let's start with what are the questions that are being asked of enterprise IT, security, HR, and facilities teams. The number one question being asked of enterprise IT is there any way, are there any tools to enforce social distancing? If someone does test COVID positive, are there any tools to retroactively go back and potentially alert other employees who were in proximity of the COVID patient? Is there any way when hot zones and congestion areas are developing to send alerts to the employees and or facilities and security teams to go dissipate the crowds in the hot zones? Are there any ways in which users can self-police, knowing where congestion areas are within the enterprise and avoiding those areas and going to alternate places? Example, if you're a hotel and you want to have patrons go to restaurants that are sparsely populated versus restaurants that have a wait or are densely populated, is there a way to provide that kind of information to patrons at a hotel? All kinds of interesting questions for enterprise IT, enterprise security, and HR teams right now. This is where we feel we can enable the Mist Juniper solution can enable enterprise IT, HR, and security teams to get some data to be able to tackle these questions. So it all starts with user journey maps. User journey maps enable enterprises to potentially know which zones a COVID positive patient has been in the last 5 days. And based on that user journey maps, we could establish proximity tracing, maintaining complete privacy and anonymity of the original patient, still be able to alert employees and or even cleaning staff on where extra cleaning and sanitation has to be done based on proximity tracing. Last but not least, alerting on congestion and hot zones as they're developing the enterprise. Juniper Mist solutions can empower IT teams to deliver these tools to the business side to bring business operations back. So let's look at each of these. The user journey mapping, if you take a user as an example, you could basically say, without disclosing the original user, identify which zones has that user been in, and more importantly, which zones has that user not been in. So if you have a sanitation process and a cleanup process, at least you know where to focus the resources. The next piece is proximity tracing. Who was in the same zone of a COVID positive patient in the last 5 days or 7 days? The Juniper Mist solution can turnkey provide this data for HR, security, IT, and facilities teams to be able to take action. And lastly, developing graphs around which zones are having more people, congestions, retroactively or currently is important. So those areas can be notified to break up the crowds or to at least more people to be avoided going into those zones. All of these are tools to enable the enterprise to return to a safe working environment. Now, why are we so uniquely confident that we have the right tools to help enterprises return to business operations? The foundational technology here are twofold. Bluetooth Low Energy, the same technology Apple and Google are using for contact tracing, is available in every Mist access point. And because we have a 16 antenna element array built, Bluetooth low energy antenna array built into every single access point, we have directionality, we have high accuracy, and have the ability to transmit and receive BLE. What that does is, with the Mist Juniper solution, you could enable mobile apps using BLE that give you high accuracy navigation for employees around the campus. Enable asset visibility. If employees carry Bluetooth Low Energy badges, then if an evacuation is issued for a wing of a floor or for a wing of a building, we could know, security can know if anybody was still in that zone. BLE tags can enable visibility for security and IT teams. Passive listening of BLE enables understanding zones of where there's a congregation of people. At the same time, the Wi-Fi technology also will be very foundational. Connected Wi-Fi users are great, have higher accuracy. Even unconnected Wi-Fi users add to the equation and the data here that is required for IT to deal with. Let's look at some of the technical consideration and the 3 fundamental modalities to be able to establish user journey, proximity tracing, and congestion alerting. Wi-Fi connected users are probably the most ubiquitous way of determining user journeys. Where did that Wi-Fi user go? Proximity tracing, which other users were in the same zone when that user was in that zone, and congestion notifications, where are a lot of Wi-Fi users congregating, including Let's say you have a classroom with a capacity of 100 students. And in a COVID-19 environment, maintaining social distancing, if you want the capacity of that classroom to now be only 25 students in a 100-seat classroom, we could enforce that. We could enable visibility for IT into that kind of enforcement using Wi-Fi connected clients. The next piece of technology that becomes very, very interesting in this conversation is BLE tags, Bluetooth Low Energy asset tags that are in the form factor of an employee ID card. These tags are always on and they are not reliant on people carrying phones, and they have a much better accuracy than Wi-Fi connected clients. Because Miss Juniper has a 16 antenna element array, our ability to receive this tag data and get accurate zone details on which zones employees are in is very, very good compared to anybody else in the industry. We feel good that this is the market leading technology, Miss Juniper BLE technology using asset tags. And then lastly, for bidirectional communication, for enabling user engagement and providing turn-by-turn navigation, helping employees avoiding hot zones, that all requires a mobile SDK that would go into your mobile app. We have a mobile SDK built in with location technology based on the Bluetooth Low Energy antenna array. Given there is 8 pairs of antennas, 16 antenna element array, we are actually beaconing 20 unique beams per second. That is 20 times a battery beacon or the beacon frequency of any of the competitors. 20 beams per second. That's why our mobile SDK, that means our mobile apps built using the Juniper Mist mobile SDK, have an accuracy of 1 to 3 meters. And that is really powerful in this age of enforcing social distancing and contact tracing. So what do you need for what technology? What sources of data do you need to enable what use cases? Wi-Fi connected clients, as we just talked about, tags that are on the employee's person, or a mobile app with the Mist SDK will give you a real-time view, clients by zone, congestion areas, proximity tracing, and user journeys. The passive BLE and unconnected Wi-Fi, which is a very unique attribute of the Mist Juniper solution, will help you in determining hot zones even if users are not using your mobile app or are connected to your Wi-Fi network. These are some of the subscriptions you're going to possibly need as you deploy this in your enterprise. Let's talk about a very, very important subject when we talk about contact tracing, proximity tracing, user journeys within the enterprise. Data privacy and trust are paramount in our consideration as we deploy this technology in the enterprises. Mist natively absolutely does not carry or record any personal health information. Nothing in the dashboard is related to a user health. It is the responsibility of the enterprise to gather that data from the employees or public health institutions and map that to an identity on Wi-Fi or BLE. So the privacy and trust is completely within the enterprise control, and the Mist Juniper technology natively does not carry or interfere with the health information and personally identifiable health information of COVID-19 patients. This is very, very top of mind for us, and I hope this puts you at ease that the enterprise, you are in control of what and how much of this data is disclosed to which constituents within the enterprise. Lastly, as you're making this very important decision on which solution to pick to enable proximity tracing and contact tracing within the enterprise, here's 5 things we feel are fundamental in how you should consider your next network of the next decade and your solution for contact tracing. Number 1, independent of who you choose, please choose cloud. Do not choose any solution that requires any on-premise boxes and any on-premise servers. We've proven in the last 20 years that anything that's coming from a vendor that requires physical servers in your data center does not have the elastic scale, is not upgraded at cloud speed, and is just too cumbersome to deploy. Number two, BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, is the fundamental foundational technology of this. Do not pick an access point vendor that has a single chip BLE antenna in their access points. That absolutely will not meet the mark when you're trying to get accurate data to act upon. And so even when you're choosing BLE, choose three fundamental requirements. Make sure you have a way to track asset tags. Believe it or not, this is going to become the norm in the enterprise, BLE-enabled ID tags. Number two, make sure you have a solution that can deploy a location-aware enterprise app. That means a native SDK from the vendor that is delivering the technology. We have our SDK in use in some of the largest enterprises in the world, and you want a tried and tested solution. That's important. And lastly, make sure you have a solution that has an antenna array that can listen in multiple angles and can listen passive BLE devices, so that you can establish hot zones even if the patrons don't download your app, are not your employees, are not carrying your asset tags. Still, you are able to establish hot zones. That's for BLE. Same thing for Wi-Fi. Ability to do connected Wi-Fi analytics and unconnected Wi-Fi analytics, paramount in this for this solution. This fourth one is so fundamental. With the Mist Juniper solution, you do not need to calibrate every building you deploy this thing in. As far as we know in the industry, and we've worked in some of the largest vendors in the networking industry, no vendor in the industry has machine learning to enable uncalibrated deployments. Every vendor will require you to calibrate every floor of every building for BLE to actually work. Mist is the only AI-driven, machine learning-driven solution that will work with no calibration for BLE, wayfinding, asset tracking. And then last but not least, make sure you pick a solution that natively, without partnering with 1,000 people and different vendors, natively offers user journeys and proximity tracing. These are the 5 fundamental requirements as you're picking your vendor that becomes your network of the next decade and will enable you to do proximity tracing and contact tracing and user journeys. Thank you very much for participating in the Juniper Mist Virtual Summit. Thank you very much for being a customer, partner, or a prospective customer investigating to become a Juniper Mist customer. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with you. For more information, please visit mist.com/proximity-tracing or contact-tracing. Thank you very much.